Hi, I'm the colorblind architect, and I'm going to talk about one of the most understated things on Archicad today, and that is revision clouds. Okay, it might seem super easy. Okay, you just grab a revision cloud, you draw it, you click, and it makes the revision cloud. Now, here's the problem with just drawing revision clouds. The problem with just drawing revision clouds is that it's not going to handle the finer points of construction documentation. Now, if you are already a practicing architect, you probably already know that revision clouds are really important in construction communication. It's really important to be able to make sure that contractors know what changes have been made to a project. So, why isn't it just easy? Why isn't it just simple? Well, we're going to get into it a little bit today. So, here goes. Now, I'm first going to start by deleting this revision cloud. And as we go into the title block, this is just a straight up USA template. So, straight out of, this is the vanilla template out of Graphisoft North America. So, nothing special here. But the reason why I'm doing this way is I wanted to start by creating a revision schedule. So the thing about a revision schedule is that by default it's kind of dumb the way they have it set up. So let's first start by fixing some of the settings. So we're going to turn off the drawing title, and of course, change this to fit frame to drawing. And then the other thing I'm going to do is this is the D architectural. So we need to go to the D architectural page, master, and we're going to copy and paste that schedule over here. Now, the reason why we're going to do that is because we want we want this to show on every sheet. So we're just going to go ahead and set it up that way. Then the next thing I'm going to do is, usually you'll want to have like some place in the title block for this to exist, but obviously we need to make some modifications to this schedule. So let's go ahead and right click, say open source view. That's going to bring up the schedule. Now, as you can see, I'm on a 4K screen and the text is really small if I don't zoom it in quite a lot. So let's go to the index settings. Now, you'll notice on your project map, this is under project indices. So don't be looking for this in the schedules. This is in the project indices, and under that, we can also get there by right-clicking on it and going to this index settings. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to set up the fields that we want. So by default, it comes as change ID, change name, last modified by, last modified date, and status. Now, this could be good information, but it could also be way more than what your contractor needs to know. This might be a good list for maybe internal use. So instead, what we want to do is we want to set this up so that it only shows the change ID, the name of the change, which a lot of times is also a description, and then we want to show when this change was made. So what's the last modified date? So let's go ahead and get the last modified by and remove that. And we're going to get rid of the status because that's only helpful. The status is only helpful for internal use. And if you're just a sole practitioner like me, you're not going to be needing that because you already know the status. You already know because you're doing everything yourself. But as soon as you start having a larger office with multiple people, knowing who made the last change and knowing what the status of the change is could actually be useful information, but it wouldn't necessarily be something that you'd want on the sheet. So you might actually have two change lists. So maybe you have like your regular revision schedule, and maybe you also have a change list for internal use that you can just regularly look at. I'm also going to rename this schedule to revision. Actually, revisions, plural. So let's see how that looks. Okay. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to change the text for change ID to a number sign. I'm also going to change this to centered because realistically, I don't need that much space for it. Now, typically on my title blocks, I use about a 5-inch, uh, you know, a 5-inch distance there. In this case, we're trying to fit this into we're trying to fit this into the Graphisoft template, which I'm not as familiar with exactly how that one works. So I'm just going to squeeze that as tight as I can, and then maybe pop this up to 4 inches. I think that should be enough. And then the change, I'm just going to leave that um, as left oriented. The date I'm going to set center oriented, and I'm hoping that that's going to be enough for most dates. I should actually maybe just give it just a hair bit more space, just in case you have, um, October through December, where it's going to be a 2-digit month. Now, the other thing you should remember if you're watching this from outside of the United States, yes, our date structure is weird compared to the rest of you in the world. We do month, day, year. Okay? So I know we do it weird, but that's us. The other thing we do is we always have AM, PM. We don't use military time for civilian projects. So here we go. Let's go back to our master layout and let's figure this out. Is this a good enough size? Now, here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to keep this at 100% because nobody really cares if it's exactly the right scale. So what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to actually go to the scale graphically, and I'm going to take that corner to that corner, and I'm just going to snap to the inside of this title block. And let's try that again because I missed the snap. I hit the wrong point. So let's just make sure we're getting the right point. Now, the next thing that I want to do on my schedule is I'm not a fan of having this just ever expanding. So if you've got a project where it grows enough points, you're probably going to want to set this up with the last change first. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, and actually I do not need to organize this schedule by change name or last modified date, but I do want it by change ID. But instead of descending, I'm going to do ascending order. That way, as an older revision goes, it's going to descend down the list. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this up about, let's say maybe 5 times, because I don't want to have too much space in here. And really, five revisions is probably enough for the current. Now you'll notice that I just also stretched the viewport box for this schedule. That way, as we add more changes, we'll get more lines added to this. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to our first floor plan, and I'm going to go ahead. We're just going to create another change. I'm not going to bother with trying to link the change. So let's just go ahead and draw that. Okay, and then change 3 is here. Okay, and now let's actually go over here. Now you'll notice as I regenerate the layout, you'll see that now we've got the most recent change mark 3 is marked there. Now, let's say I want to update these changes. What I can do is I can actually go over here to Window, Palettes, and Change Manager. And this is a really helpful palette So on each of these, I can edit each change. So this would be, um, let's say this is just creating a little more fun in your life. Okay. Now, you'll notice that that actually updated in the change list. Now let's create a couple more changes. Testing again. And again, there is a change. Okay. Now, the reason why I did that is I wanted to just illustrate how this starts building out. So I'm just going to do yet one more change. And now you'll see on the change schedule, because I've clipped it to just 5 lines, you'll now see that we're on change mark 6 and it's already pushed change mark 1 down. Okay, so it works just fine. Now the other thing that we're going to do here is I want these revision clouds. I want these to actually show the change ID instead of the issue ID. Now, here's where we get into the complexity of Archicad's change manager. And let me tell you how to make it really simple if you're a sole practitioner. So by default, this is meant for a larger office where you're going to have very specific change packages. Now, ideally, you would want the changes to be per an issue ID. But notice on this change list, I've got this set to the change mark and not the issue ID. Well, how do I get to the issue IDs? Well, that's under Transmittals. And under Transmittals, the first time you produce a set, so like let's say you're sending this for building permit for the first time, you're going to create a new transmittal set. You're going to say continue anyways, and then it's going to include every layout, no matter what status it is, no matter if you've ever done a change, because your first transmittal is always your construction document set or your building permit set, just depending on how you want to call it, but that's the point. So now if I hit close, like let's say assuming this project is done and it's out the door to the authority having jurisdiction, they're going ahead and doing their reviews, you hit close and that finishes it up. Now you'll notice that all these change marks on the clouds are not referring to the change list, they're referring to the issue ID. Well, that's a problem, right? I mean, like, because we're supposed to be having the delta showing in the change list. So let's go back here and we're gonna go into the revisions settings, and I'm also gonna fix the title again. Now, if we go back into the index settings, we can actually add the fields and we can say, status or last changed by. So this is actually not the right schedule for that. So what you're going to do is you'd want to go and you'd want to say transmittal set contents issued sets. Okay. And then when you create your issued sets, you can do your transmittal set. So that's going to be your transmittal set ID, transmittal set ID name. You'll probably want your transmitted date. So let's go ahead and put that in there. So when we open that up, you're going to see that that first construction document set that we did, That's now showing up in the issued sets. So if you want to track your changes by transmittals, then great. This is what you would do, and then you'd place this on your master sheet or even on a cover sheet. Now, if you're looking to do it like a more simple way, let me show you how to do it, because this is a lot more complicated if you're having to deal with issued sets. And let me show you why. So now that we've got that first issue, and let's go ahead and, just for sake of argument, so that's the revisions, this is the issued sets. Okay, so let's say we wanted to now create a new change, and first RFI from contractor, okay? And so let's say we put that in there, and we're going to go ahead and this time, instead of doing the create new change, I'm actually going to link it to this change that I just created in Change Manager. I'm going to say place linked marker, and I'm going to set it to change 7. And let's say I changed this door. Now, you'll notice this change, this cloud, is still saying transmittal set. Okay, so that means we're going to have to go back to our transmittals, and let's say we actually issue this, and so we're going to create a new transmittal set. We're going to continue anyways. This is RFI number 1, and we're only going to include the sheets that are changed. Now, by default, when you create this new transmittal set, it's going to say in blue which sheets you've actually put a change mark on. So these revision clouds, that actually affects what shows up in the layout. So if I hit close transmittal set, now it's going to hide all the change marks from transmittal 1, and it's going to show only the clouds for transmittal 2. Now, this is fine and all. This is great. But if you're a sole practitioner and maybe you're just doing like houses, or just you want to keep it really simple and you don't want to get confused, here's a simpler way. So let's say you want to just show on the cloud what shows in your change schedule here. What you can do is just ignore the whole transmittal thing, and you can actually just go create new change, and we're just gonna say to hell with transmittals. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and pop that in and place it. Now, of course, this is still showing transmittal set ID, but you can change this. Instead of your marker text showing issue ID, we can delete that and say show change ID. Okay, that's great. So, but here's the problem. It's saying 03 work in progress 1. Uh-oh. How do we fix that problem? Well, here's what we do. So if you don't want to deal with the whole transmittals system, which is a little wonky, it is a little bit complicated, but you don't necessarily need to use that. If you want to just do very simple change tracking, go back into your changes, numbering of changes and revisions, and instead of saying number by revisions, just switch this under numbering of changes and revisions to use change ID. Now, if we refresh our layout, you'll now see change mark 08 to hell with transmittals made at 6:43 p.m. And look, the revision cloud is showing the change mark that's in here. Now, again, these are two different ways of doing essentially the same thing. One is going to allow you to easily get rid of these clouds if you don't want to show older clouds. And that would be using the transmittal system. which is actually the way that Graphisoft designed it to be used, which, like I said, is a little bit more complicated, but admittedly, it is a better system if you're trying to track a complicated project. Like I said, if it's a very simple project, I don't care. Like a lot of times, I just want this to be really simple. Like especially if it's just like a small single family house. I, you know, I might have like three changes, and I don't want to deal with like transmittals. That's like extra, extra clicking, extra stuff. Now, if it's a more complicated commercial project, yes, I'll use transmittals. Now, is it confusing? Yeah. So if you've got a larger staff, like if you've got drafters, use the transmittal system. But if it's just you can say to hell with transmittals. So, anyways, hopefully this has been a helpful little tutorial on the change system. I I honestly, like I'd love to see in the comments like what you do for change tracking, and also I'd love to have a little discussion sometime. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on what do you do for document control, because I'll tell you that's one of the most hellish things for me as an architect is trying to figure out how do you protect your project from contractors having the wrong version of the plans on site? How do you actually make sure that they have the proper version? I've tried a lot of different things, and so far, the best thing I've been able to find is just tell my clients do not hire a contractor that does not have a good change tracking project management system. But that's not a 100% method. So yeah, type in the comments. Let me hear it. Especially for small projects where you don't have full-time project managers for your contractors, let alone a full-time project manager for your sole practitioner office like me, or like maybe you've only got two people in the office or five people in the office, so you still don't really have a project manager per se. So you're wearing all hats as the architect, right? How do you manage it? I'd love to hear. Pop it into the comments below. And hey, if you like this video, if you like this content, make sure to subscribe. So again, I'm the Colorblind Architect. Thanks for joining me today. Peace out.